reception on the video that we're shooting for sure. So thanks everybody for being here. Welcome to our first manufacturer-only breakfast since pre-pandemic. So it's been quite a while since we've had a group like this together. So thanks for being here. Hope you're enjoying the breakfast. Really appreciate everybody showing up today. So none of this would be possible without our sponsors, and I know we have several sponsors in the room today. So if you could raise your hand when I call out your name. Mike from Lapata Flegel, Dave from Parkside in the back, Lauren from Atomic right over here, Jason from Swift Systems running the technology, Tom from Black Twig sends his regrets that he could not be here this morning. Something came up. Jamie from CMA, Paul from Polsonelli, and Matt from Scarin. Thanks everybody for being here. So there is a table in the front that's got some information about the sponsors. There's some interesting blog articles, some marketing material, things like that. Also on your desk is a one-pager for the manufacturing group itself, and then there are some upcoming events which are all to be announced. Our next event is in November, the second Friday in November, so that'll be coming up before we know it. But just wanted to thank the sponsors and thank you all for being here. So we've got a great talk today from Bob Alvarez. Bob is the president and COO of Shapiro Metals, where he provides leadership, vision, and support to a nationwide team of sustainability and recycling professionals. Bob's career began with roles in quality assurance, which led him to leadership roles in operations and human resources in a variety of industries before joining Shapiro Metals in 2015 as VP of Operations. Bob's leadership journey, however, began much earlier. At an early age, he began studying leadership by watching his mentors and coaches, as well as reading everything he could on the subject. Ultimately, Bob believes that choosing a path of leadership means choosing to devote his life and his work to people. For Bob, truly caring about people entails inspiring them, providing support, and in some cases, helping them change, to name a few. Bob's experience has also taught him another important lesson, that culture is everything. It is the essence of how a company does what it does, how it interacts with internal and external stakeholders, and how it ultimately delivers its value. He believes in creating a culture that is inspired by the purpose of making a meaningful sustainability impact for both stakeholders and the planet. So if you could please help me welcome Bob.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Good morning. Let me get just a little bit situated here. So, like Tom said, I'm with Shapiro, and it's truly an honor to be here. When Tom and I met, I didn't have a clue what I could talk about, so I pulled something out of you-know-where and said, let's talk about change. And so that's what we kind of did. As Tom mentioned, we're 119 years old. We were formed in the year of the World's Fair. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 120th. But today, after 119 years and going into next year, we are a sustainability company, not the scrap company we started as. And that's the transformation that's underway at our company and perhaps in the world. What do we do? Well, we're enabled by technology. So not only are we in the guts of the alley of a business, we're also collecting data and returning it back to our customers so they can provide it to their customers who are requiring this information. We also produce circular products and provide circular services. What you see up on the screen is we've become a purpose-driven company. Our purpose is to make the planet better together. What does that mean? Well, making the planet better together means we make a measurable, permanent impact. And together means radical collaboration. And what is our vision is? Our vision is what our purpose is fulfilled in the future. And that is the avalanche of waste that goes through facilities is eliminated. Now, all of you have seen this almost every day. There's talk about disruption, or something is attacking a business and putting something else out of business, the phone, and we celebrate that on an ongoing basis. But there's another measure that's probably equally important, and that is longevity. How many of your companies have been in business more than 20 years? More than 30? More than 40? And then more to 50. Yeah. So, congratulations. You've been dealing with change over generations, dealing with things happening in the business and the geopolitical and natural disasters, and you've been responding to all of those things. So, you've dealt with volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, complexity. This is getting real complicated. So there are a lot of companies turning 100 this year, and there's several organizations talking about longevity, being able to contend and respond to all these things going on in the world. Companies like Hasbro, Disney, Time, Ecolab, Textron, and Nielsen all are turning 100. And you can see the dynamics they're dealing with. So, why did I start with 20? Because today, 20 is the average amount of time a company lasts on the S&P 500. And you can see the analytics, it's going to drop way below that and maybe recover a little bit. And why is that? Well, 80% of new businesses never scale. So the mere fact that you're still in business, you already made it through one part of the gauntlet. Only 15% of the mid-size and large corporations make an effective transformation. That's why they don't last on here. So what am I doing here today then? Well, first of all, Tom asked me. And who says no to Tom? Second, he asked me even though I'm not an expert on anything. You guys have survived for more than 20 plus years. You guys are the experts on change. Lastly, he asked me even though I'm not a public speaker, you can see me jostling all these tools, I'm not used to doing this. So I'd really rather have a conversation with you and ask you to participate in this presentation, because I can talk, I put it together, but I'd rather have a conversation. So I'd like to start with a story, and then I'll ask you guys for some questions. In 2009, a professor at Stanford had their class do something pretty interesting. And that is, she gave them $5 and 2 hours. And the winner was going to be the company that got the most from that $5. So the first team did what you would expect. They bought something, bartered it, bought something with what they bartered, bought something else, and they made an increment over $5, but not very impressive. The second group ignored the $5. They used the 2 hours to generate money by selling reservations to premium restaurants I think they were doing something with washing cars or fixing bikes, but regardless, they made an increment better than the first team. The third team went out there and did something incredibly different. They ignored the $5 and they said the 2 hours was not sufficient to make anything out of the $5. So what did they do? They went out and they said, what's valuable that I have to sell? And they realized that they were going to present at the end of this to their MBA class at Stanford. So what did they do? They auctioned the time slot they had to present to the class to an employer who was interested in being able to entertain potential employees. They got $650 for that time slot, and they won the competition. Well, what does that tell you? It tells you that you got to think outside the box to really make a difference, and where you put your effort should be really, really meaningful to get the results. For me, it tells us something else. Oh God, I'm behind on slides. It tells me something else, and that is they weren't competing. They didn't care what the competitors were doing. They went and did something on their own. So today we can discuss change in a 119-year-old company, but since you guys have been dealing with change forever, all I'm going to do is provide a context and some stories about how we did it. I can tell you why we needed to change, what we needed to change, how we went about some of that change, what did leadership have to do, what has been the results so far, and what's next. So, I wonder, do you guys have any questions about change that you'd like to make sure we speak to today and provide that context to? Yeah, Matt?
Betting the change that it's going the right direction versus we're changing for the sake of change. Some indicators that
Very good.
recourse.
Good. Anybody else? Well, I'm going to give you some questions to think about. Did you have one?
Just the how do you deal with the we've always done it that way mindset? Like
That'll be a big part of what we talk about today. Habits and experience kill us. And more so today than maybe ever, because it isn't that we're not used to dealing with change. It's the pace of change today and how we anticipate the future that's changing so rapidly. It isn't the change itself. You're experts at that. You've been doing it forever. But I'll show you some stuff here that'll give you some things to think about, and I'll talk about the leadership a little bit. Any others? Well, I'm going to read a few for you to think about while we go through this, if it's okay with you. And they're not on my presenter view because I did them on the plane last night. Is your long-term view reflected in your short-term priorities? How are you separating from the herd? Is your strategy, is your change around differentiating yourselves? Do you have the resources in your organization allocated to that change? And are there appropriate amount of them? Do you solve customer problems? Are you selling, are you using your resource, are selling solutions? So are you selling your products or are you solving your customer's problem? Which also comes to, does your innovation for your customers, is your innovation for your efficiency? For us, and maybe for you, one of the questions was, do you have a salesman problem or a sales problem? How could you be put out of business? There's a whole book about that, Kate Bodell. It's a really interesting thing to think about. What's preventing you from making the change? Kind of to your question. What are you doing about that? Do you have a purpose? It's really important to the employee base we're hiring today. And if you looked at your industry and compared yourself to it, what is the industry ignoring that could be an opportunity for you to to separate from the herd. So I'm going to share a couple quotes with you. This one is from Bill Gates, and I think it's really, really profoundly true. We always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, and we underestimate the change that will occur in 10. But said differently, we also overestimate what we think we can do in 2 years, and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. And that certainly was true for Shapiro. This gentleman is a really interesting person, and if you're not familiar with him, he's probably worthwhile. His name's Ray Kurzweil. He talks about exponential change a lot, and I think that's what we're encountering today. The quote is, "Our intuition about the future is linear, but our reality of information technology is exponential, and that makes a profound difference." And then he goes on to describe what that might look like. If you walk 30 paces, you're going to take 30 steps. But if you do that exponentially, it adds up to 1 billion. That's what we're seeing today. One of the people out there that's kind of addressed this with a diagram it's called Martek's Law. Martek's Law talks about exponential and organizational change at this level. This is where disruption occurs. And that's what's happening to us. We're operating on this level and have been slow, steady progress, but the world is changing at this rate, and new entrants are coming in here, making this really difficult. That's what we see. Another way to look at it, and why it's so dangerous, is this is the exponential change. This is our normal linear change. We don't see the disruption coming because it looks linear until it overtakes us. So that's the other part of the challenge to consider. This is another version of it. This is also from Ray. But where we end up, way up here, we didn't expect it. Where did you think we would end up? That's the linear, and that surprise factor is where the disruption comes in. So, I wish I had all these tools and all this knowledge about change before we started. This is stuff I'm accumulating as we go, some as recently as last week. And this is one of the things that I discovered last week, and I'll share with you because I think it's an interesting way to think about change. And that is, instead of building your strategy on a timeline, what am I going to do year 1, year 2, year 3? Build it in a cone. Because across the top, if you build experiments into your tactics, you get data, evidence, and certainty to inform your strategy. You build experiments out here, you can get your vision. And I think sometimes we just work on this linear flow, and we're not building the experiments, creating the evidence or the certainty that we might need. So I think it's a really good tool. So I share it with you. The other thing is the realistic and the practical thing. And that is, we all have to manage the present and the future. And that present and future can be a heck of a paradox. It can be very, very challenging. McKinsey put together an interesting way to look at this. And that is, the holistic side is really those things that you have to do to manage the present. And the business reinvention is the stuff you might have to do for the future, if that's what you decide to do. And they line up, you got to get your financial performance so that you can do the future. You have to have organizational health, the resources, so you can do the present and the future. You have to have talent and capabilities and Is that talent able to move into the future? You have to have customer experience lined up really solid. And here's one that you probably don't often see, ESG. I'm going to speak to that here if you don't mind. On Wednesday, I spoke at an ESG conference in Denver to an audience that included General Motors, Allison Engine, Applied Materials, Cummins Engine, a whole host of companies, 20,000 times larger than Shapiro. I mean, billions of dollars compared to millions of dollars. And this stuff's coming, and there's no stopping it. It might come out of the press because of the political landscape and the dynamics, but there's no question it's coming. General Motors is going to require it for all 30,000 suppliers they have, and the suppliers below them. And they're building that program right now, and it's the only way you're going to be able to do business with them. So depending what tier you are in that field, it's coming. So that's the reason it makes this list. You have to be responsible in business. On the invention side, you're going to change your core operating model. How well do you know that? What new businesses are you going to create or buy? You have to have big strategic plans, big strategic moves kind of thought through. And that's where that cone comes in. What are you testing in the next 2 years that can give you a big strategic move in 3 to 5? Analytics, that's changing every day. And you're either going to be part of a platform or going to have a platform. This is a tool from McKinsey that I thought might be worthwhile sharing with you. I wish we would have had this when we started, but it really helps you manage the present and the future, and it helps you score where you are on that continuum. We are still a laggard, and we've been working on this since 2015. If I was objective enough, we might be lower laggard than when we started, but we're a laggard. So the point here is change is going to come whether we're ready for it or not, agree with it or not. It doesn't matter what industry we're in, what our size is, or what geography. That exponential technology change is coming. There are kids in garages today that could put Shapiro out of business. That's happening every day. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about our history and then get into what we did at Shapiro. Like I said, we had humble beginnings. Bruce's grandfather came over from he was an immigrant, and it was very difficult for that particular persuasion of immigrants to find a job. And so he was a junk peddler. And on his immigration papers, that's what he said he was. So with a horse and a buggy, he started collecting stuff on the side of the road, and that's how Shapiro started. Bruce's dad then took over, died at an early age, and Mom took over. And then in 1970, Bruce Shapiro took over. Under Bruce, he was very entrepreneurial. He took uncanny risks. Ideas were flowing. They're still overwhelming, and he's at 76 years of age, and his ideas kill me in my role. They're just too many, and we don't have enough to do them all. They're not bad, they're just not properly timed all the time. But his focus was really about recycling, metal recycling, and he grew the company to 10 locations all across the South, from St. Louis down to Jacksonville, and from St. Louis over to El Paso. We operated under that umbrella. Just that footprint alone limited us, made it very difficult to compete. And what we discovered the industry was missing was there was really no national player. Nobody that could work around multiple locations for a client. Everyone thought that was too difficult to achieve. The other thing he did with all those crazy ideas is he experimented a lot. And in those experiments, what we saw were things that turned into businesses for us today. Like taking scrap metal, melting it, and returning it back to a client in the exact chemistry that they would buy primary. It was way ahead of its time. It's still very difficult to get the industry to accept. I was talking to somebody earlier, engineers at companies don't want to change either. And they spec primary billet, that's what they want to buy. However, we offer them recycling content that has 90% less carbon emissions, it's 90% friendlier to the environment, and our engineers can't get that, they can't see that that's the equivalent material. So it's still a challenge. Nonetheless, there are tip of the spear companies that are moving in that direction. And then, surprisingly enough, General Motors is one of them. They're already bringing suppliers in, looking at their parts and saying that doesn't have to be primary. We can reduce our carbon emissions and our scope 3 emissions just with changing this alloy. So he's way ahead of his time. Now, when we did that, we didn't do it for the right reason. We didn't do it for sustainability. We did that because there was an arbitrage. We could make an extra 5 cents a pound if we did that. But today, there are companies actually requiring it. So we got practice in. And there are a host of those kind of examples. So why did Shapiro have to change? Well, you know our Stanford story earlier? We were too focused on competing and really not focused on winning. Our value proposition had become stale. It's even more profoundly so today. I don't know if you're experiencing this, but we are. Our customers really aren't working on opportunities. They're short labor. They have supply chain issues. They are really stuck in the present. They're not working on an opportunity to maybe improve something incrementally or maybe something strategically. They're just trying to get their job done. At the corporate level, of course, they're all talking strategy and the big things that need to happen. But at the ground level, that's what we deal with. So if we didn't have something different to sell, why would they ask us in to even talk to them? So our value proposition had become pretty stale. We were very commoditized and still are. Worse yet, we weren't growing. I'll share these statistics with you. You know, over an 8-year period, with the puts and takes, we had a sales team working really, really hard. They weren't all bad, they weren't all great, but they were working very, very hard. We grew, let's make it easy math, a couple million pounds of volume a year, not enough to really cover inflation. But what you have to ask yourself is how much did you invest to just grow that much? So it meant, did we have a salesman problem or did we have a sales problem? Well, we had a sales problem. We didn't have anything they could sell that was different than what their current provider was offering. So it became strictly price. Now that's a downhill spiral. Worse yet, that affected the kind of talent we could bring into the company. And that was a significant blow. So what did we change? Well, we needed to change our approach to the market. We had to approach the market in a much different way. And that is, we had to become interesting to them. They had to want to come and see us or us come and see them. We had to change our approach to sales, and we had to give them, not only give them something to sell, but we had to sell much differently. We had to think way bigger than scrap and what industry we were in, what industry were we going to move into. Then there was the leadership mindset really had to change, and that's still a journey we're on. The new businesses that the McKinsey diagram talked about, we had to find some new businesses to enter to decommoditize a business that's central, or central theme as being commodity. Ultimately, we had to move out of our comfort zone and separate from the herd. That was the main thrust of what we had to do with what. I'm sorry. How? Well, we started this journey probably around 2018. We codified it in 2022. And we codified it with a totally different approach to strategy. We brought in a demand generation expert to lead our strategic planning. So we wanted to start with the market, our approach to the market, and demand generation. That demand generation is really about demand creation. It's based on the premise that marketing is the new sales. And so that took us on a whole lot of journeys. Out of that, we got our purpose. We were able to articulate our purpose. We were already attracting talent to that purpose because we started our pivot toward being a sustainability company way earlier than 22. We identified our vision, our purpose, and we identified and kind of codified our two core obsessions, which was to provide an exceptional experience and to be data-driven. Now, you don't often associate data-driven with a metal recycling company. The exceptional experience, if there was one differentiator under Bruce's tenure other than transparency and integrity, it would have been our service. So the experience was already part of our DNA. But we further defined that to be both our internal employee experience and our customer experience. Our marketing and sales strategy has grown out of this strategy. We now have 3 levels of sales, plus the service department. At the top of the level is marketing. We want to provide a lot of content to the market because 75% of the decision is made before you're asked into their office, right? So we want to make sure they know who we are, what's different about us, why they should talk to us, what we do, case studies, white papers. Out of that, we added a fractional storyteller. Some of you know who that is. He's around here a lot. John Nicely. He's been very helpful in us being able to put our stories out there in both videos and in other content that is showing up in this awareness level. So we built a team around creating awareness. Our salespeople are really sales enablers. So what do we do with the top of the funnel at the awareness is we make sure they know, like, and trust us. Our sales team in the middle makes sure they get to try and buy from us. Then our bottom of the funnel group is our client experience and customer service. Client experience gets them to repeat. Now, we sign up on contracts, so repeat is really expand, and they get us to refer. And then customer service takes care of that as well. So that's our sales redesign, and there's a whole strategy behind it. It's much more metric driven. There's a lot of things going into it, and we are far from done. We suck at nurturing. So we have to improve our nurturing in a big way. Out of that strategy and those experiments from Bruce's tenure, we started 2 new companies. One is called our Master Alloys division that I described earlier, taking scrap recycled metal and turning it into proprietary or turning it into primary aluminum replacement, additive replacement, and recycling content. And we do that with a big data package behind it, helping them equate that to their ESG requirements. And we launched this week in a soft launch, and it'll be launched next year in the 120th anniversary. We launched Circular by Shapiro, which is a national, we do business in Canada, Mexico, from coast to coast today, sustainability and circular services company. Embedded in that is a fluid recovery business, so not only has our innovation taken us into how, it took us into products. One of those innovations is a fluid recovery business for CNC machines, where we return their cutting fluid, instead of it going into waste haulers, go back into their machine and reuse that material. So we pivoted to sustainability. And again, I say it's because the marketplace wasn't being responded to by our competitors in that area. You know, I mean, there's a big difference in gross margin between handling the metal and doing all the other services, unless you do some things different. We lease equipment today to our customers. We help them because they're capital constrained often. We create a solution, and I'll tell you a real quick case study. Customer down in Georgia, part of a giant HVAC company, multiple locations, all over the world and all over the country, came to us because their current waste provider would not help them go eliminate waste to landfill. If this was an ESG crowd, this would not be a great case study because of what we did, but it was what that customer's objective was. So we went in there, and their current partner wouldn't help them. So we went in there and we did an audit, walked the plant, looked at their waste streams, and you know, our pivot is we want to own the alley. Everything that takes place is the byproducts of a manufacturing process is what we want to facilitate. So we went in there and we looked at it and we recommended some equipment. We looked at their waste streams. We identified what they could do. We collaborated with radical collaboration. I mean, we managed trade-offs with them. It was a very interactive thing. The outcome of it, all being reported through our platform and our web portals to the customer, including not just financial data, but sustainability data. We took 407 loads going to the landfill down to 50. And those 50 all went waste to energy. Out of that, we found in their trash, even though they had a recycling program for cardboard, 97 tons of cardboard was leaking into the trash. And we provided them with lease agreements, the equipment, to reduce those loads to that 50. Now, on a local level, and to the people I was talking to on Wednesday, we saved 265 tons of greenhouse gas. The equivalent of, you know, a big equivalent to cars, and it was like 65 tons of coal and 11,550 gallons of diesel fuel to produce that energy. More importantly, we saved them $157,000 a year, because certain trash companies don't care how many tons are in that roll-off. They get paid by the pickup. Us densifying that changed the whole landscape. I'll tell you that 90% of the time, first pass sustainability programs in the alley save money. They don't cost. So that's a paradigm our content has to kind of contend with. The other thing that was really interesting about it is we discovered all that cardboard, but that wasn't all we discovered. There were other things leaking into their trash stream that were recyclable and valuable, probably tens of thousands of dollars. Now, Those aren't big numbers, and they don't mean a lot to General Motors when they hear those numbers. But the truth of the matter, that plant recommended Shapiro. In our very first project, we won the International Sustainability Award for that company. So that kind of codified this pivot to sustainability. You asked about leadership earlier. I'm not a big Georgia fan, but I'm a big SEC fan. This probably sums it up better than anything I can say, but I'll speak to it a little bit. So if you don't mind, I'd like to read these three. One, you will have to make hard decisions that negatively affect people you care about. Let me speak to that just a second. You're going to have to deal with your loyalty and the objectiveness of performance and their ability to take you where you want to go. And those are going to be hard decisions. I'm dealing with two going into 2024. These are people I love, but they can't get me where I want to go. What am I going to do about that? And how creative can I be and maintain the culture? Number two, you will be disliked despite your best attempts to do the best for the most. What I experience is you're going to be second guessed out the wazoo because you are making a big bet. Number three, you will be misunderstood and won't always have an opportunity to defend yourself. Profoundly true. But in addition to that, no matter how much you communicate, it still might not be understood. No matter how much you measure alignment, it might not be understood. Part of that is the receiver doesn't want to understand it sometimes. And part of that is you're not connecting with them at the right level. And that's true for us, internally and externally. Some of the things that I think you're dealing with here is this change is emotional. You're trying to break habits. You're trying to break experience. And your teams are wired to do the stuff the way they've been doing it. And that's very emotional. There's a fear they can't. How do you encourage them that they can? How do you show them? Those misconceptions are really the filter your information's going through. And you have to kind of connect with each person where they are. The last thing on leadership that I'll lead you with is you got to become intensely curious. None of us know where this is going to end up. So are you asking the best questions you can ask? Because you're going to pivot, you're going to jig, you're going to zag, you're just going to keep moving. What are the lessons we've learned? Don't overeat. I should listen better. Don't overeat. You know, the 3 to 5 big things that the company's working on is more than enough. Watch out for hubris. You could have some false starts, some false successes, and you could get overzealous about what your capabilities really are. Things are going to go wrong, and all your experiments aren't going to work. So you got to adjust constantly. Here's one that goes back to the Bill Gates quote: "It takes longer than you think it's going to take." In that adversity that occurs when things go wrong, the people you thought were with you might not have been. And those tests are critical to getting the right team together when you're through it. So their true self shows up because as soon as kind of the stuff hits the fan, they want to go back. And when they go back, am I okay on time? When they go back, they show their true colors, right? Because you're trying to burn those boats and move forward, and they're trying to pull you back. There's a big difference. One of the things we learned, there's a big difference from agreement and true alignment. Big difference. And habits and experience are a double-edged sword. You need them for the present, but those habits and experiences are what kills you in the future, because you need different habits and experiences to be built. So where are we today? Well, when I did this speech similar to this at the Entrepreneurs Institute, I told the group there we were going to have a record year, our third in a row. That is profoundly wrong. We are going to have a terrible year. And why? Well, first off, us leaders, we effed up. We screwed up in major ways. We didn't see certain things coming, so we own it. Yeah, there was a black swan event in the industry that affected us. Just to give you a quick high-level view of it, we sell into a market that's primary metals. That's protected by hedging. Our raw materials that we buy and it can't be protected. So what happened is what we were selling into did this, and what we were buying didn't change. So our margins just got the hell kicked out of them. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us our strategy's right. We got to get less commodity businesses in our portfolio, or we're going to be a boom to bust business. And if we're a boom to bust business, we are not going to keep talent. They're going to stay with us as long as they're getting bonuses and leave us as soon as they don't. So we also got a lot else out of this year. We found out who was with us and who isn't. Who's an obstacle to the change? Who wants to go back? Who's more comfortable there than where we're going? We learned all of that this year. So that's where we are. But we also got something else. This is what really happens. There's going to be a chasm, right? But when we look at it and we feel it in the moment, we feel it as one step forward and two back, or two steps forward and one back. But really, you're progressing when you look at it and zoom out. So even in this rough year, our new marketing and sales strategy, we have the largest pipeline Shapiro has ever had. It's literally 2 times our best. And it's growing every day. So the sales, there's a little bit of feedback. Our sales and our awareness and our new pipeline strategy, demand generation is actually starting to work. The hubris in our leadership team is, man, we were having great success in that Master Alloys division, and then it got creamed on margins. What we discovered is we sucked at it. I mean, we didn't have the right processes in place, the right amount of resources dedicated to it. So we fixed all of that this year. If this was last year, that record would have been astounding based on the improvements, but we're getting creamed even though we're better. I think the most important thing we got out of what we learned out of where we are is we gained a lot of humility. We became a lot more curious. So that'll inform our planning for next year. And truthfully, the other thing we did is, even though I told you not to, is we continue to overeat. I mean, we just can't get down to 3 to 5 really important things and stay there. And that's a big part of why we weren't able to see what was coming at us. I mentioned earlier, where are we going? We're going more tech. The scrap company is going more tech. I think that's an important correlation. The customers that we're interacting with are demanding it. It differentiates us. But more importantly, that's what the kid in the garage is building that'll put us out of business. So I love this slide, digital transformation tree. Do you want to be relevant in 5 years? Yes, digitally transform. No, keep doing the same thing. That kind of explains the whole thing. So we're building out our national network. There is not a national network for sustainability solutions for the alleys in the world. And we're starting to put those things together. And we have pockets where we have solutions for everything. We also, like I mentioned, one of our behaviors is find and fix the hard stuff. And in find and fix the hard stuff, we are working on solutions to things that people don't know what to do with that are still entering their waste stream, like casting sand and fiberglass and things like that. So we have a whole team dedicated to those solutions because that's content. When we find a solution and tell the world we have a solution, somebody's going to be interested in our services. Automation. All of our customers are dealing with being shorthanded. So the alley has to be really easy. It's not what they're paid to focus on. So we got to make it simple, and technology and automation is going to do that. Things that Tom and Jason are helping us with, like third-party applications, no-touch scheduling, all of those kind of things are a part of our strategy. Furthermore, traceability and transparency is profoundly important in the market. So we're looking at blockchain. Yeah, blockchain, Shapiro, those two things would never have been together. And out of all of that, use stories to connect with our marketplace and our ideal clients. So just in closing, a couple thoughts. One, this is what the real journey is. This is what I thought it was last year. This is what it turns out it is. And that's where we are. And I think you gotta, this is a good quote for the surfer mentality, and that is, there's another wave coming. We don't know what it's gonna be. So this is what I'll close with. In my opinion, I'd rather fail pursuing the future than succeed in the present. Thank you. Do I need this?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Nice job. Sorry guys, trying to get my mic on here for streaming, folks. Okay, you got me? All right, how about another round of applause for Bob? Lots of stuff going on there, lots of great information that really applies to any business that there might be. So thank you for doing that. So a couple things. Our next event is going to be November 10th. That'll be our normal big group event with everybody here that day. There are some feedback forms on your desk or your table in front of you. If you could fill those out, please. That's how we base the next events and the feedback that we get from everybody to create different ideas for the event. There are recycle bins on the side, if you could please recycle. And then there's a little box at the back end that's got please return your name badge here. If you could return your name badge there, we would appreciate that. And then last but not least, we're going to do something interesting here. Here is a t-shirt that one of our manufacturers brought. Would you like to say just a little bit about who you are?
Sure, we just have some t-shirts made and I wanted to get them out so people would wear them. But we're Piecework Manufacturing. We've been around for 70 years. And but it's new to me, and I make custom springs. So that's what we do.
Awesome, thank you. So first person with their hand up gets a free t-shirt. First person with their hand up gets a free t-shirt. Paul, here you go, buddy. Congratulations. All right, everyone, thanks for being here. Hope you enjoyed the beautiful weather this weekend. I think it's mid-70s most of next week, so I think fall is upon us, but we really appreciate Bob. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate all of you for kicking off or re-kicking off our first manufacturing-only breakfast since the pandemic. So thank you all. Have a good day.